Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 18th, 2025. It's 3 p.m. This is City of Prescott City Council meeting. We'll start with roll call, please. Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
I am here.
Councilman Grady.
Present.
Councilman Montoya.
Here.
And Councilman Moore.
Here.
All are present.
And even though it's not on the agenda, I'd like to have everyone join me in pledging allegiance to our great republic and the flag that represents it.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. We have one item on the agenda. City Clerk, would you like to read it?
Thank you, Mayor. Approval of the official canvass of the City of Prescott primary election held on August 5th, 2025. We do not have an official presentation on this item. Everything related to the canvass was included in your agenda packet. This is generally a consent agenda item on the next regularly scheduled meeting following the date that my office receives the canvass from the county. However, with the adoption of some new legislation last year, which is included in ARS section 16-642, we now have a shorter time frame in which to approve the canvass. So we have to do it within 20 days of the date of the election. And we did not have a regular meeting scheduled within that time frame. So that is why we are here today. This is a ministerial act. You're just approving the canvass and the packet and the invoice. And I don't have anything else. Joe, do you have anything?
No, you do have a legal opinion in your packet. Obviously, we use outside counsel for elections issues. If you have questions, though, we can answer those.
Well, I know there has been some controversy on how our city charter defines how we calculate 50% plus one of the valid ballots cast during the election, and referencing the state charter provision, which is 90, what is it? Here somewhere. ARS 9-821-01. So there were some questions from the public on which method of calculating 50% plus one would be used. And that's why we decided to go out to a very highly experienced election attorney to get an outside opinion on that. So, City Attorney, would you please interpret or summarize that letter so that the public can understand which method prevails here?
Sure. And sorry, I'm not prepared to address it, but I can. I don't have a presentation. Essentially, there was three separate issues that we sought counsel from our outside counsel. The first is whether the state statute or the charter applies in an election like this. Now, the state calculation deals with votes cast, and it's very different from the city's calculation. And our counsel pointed out that when it comes to method and means of elections in local elections, charters prevail over state law. And she quoted case law and so forth, but it's a pretty well-known axiom that that's the case. Now, the next issue is, even if you consider the charter to supersede state law, whether our method of calculation was correct, or whether the charter was silent as to the method of calculation and the state rule should still apply. And our counsel said it's not silent, that majority of valid ballots cast is clear, and to use that process. So we did that. The third issue was a little bit more complicated and relates not to whether our charter applies or not, but language in the charter that says any candidate who shall receive a majority of the valid ballots cast at such election for that office shall be declared elected. So the question is, for that office, does that change the analysis? And do we need to remove any ballots that did not have any votes for any council or potential council member? And so in that event, our outside counsel also opined that our current process was valid. I think there's two interpretations that are possible, but our outside counsel pointed out two reasons why the existing methodology makes sense. One is that it's consistent with past practice. And as far as I know, the charter was amended in 2010. I don't know if this section was changed or not, but I know since that point, the calculations have been done in this way. So there's a kind of a consistency there. And the second issue is that the county isn't set up to give us those numbers of ballots with 0 votes. And so this is sort of a practical approach. So given that there's two interpretations and these other additional factors, our outside counsel recommended we continue with the process that we've used since at least 2010.
Yeah, that's exactly how I read this legal opinion as well. So this is kind of a permissive Arizona revised statute, so that if a non-chartered city, or even if a chartered city chose to use that methodology, they could. But since we have a city charter and it does reference that and talk about valid ballots, then we have the ability to use that, and that supersedes this Arizona revised statute methodology, correct?
That's correct.
So today we are just voting on canvassing or validating the results that have been calculated and posted.
That's correct.
That's correct?
Approval of the canvas, it was included in your packet.
Do we have any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Fruworth?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge some amazing proposition results, and specifically to call out on Prop 482, our home rule election. Our final results was 76.8%, which is the highest I could find going back to the elections for home rule back to 2000. I don't know, Sarah, if you know anything earlier than that.
I don't know prior to that, but I know it is the highest that Mark and I both, when we looked at the results, were pretty blown away at how high it was. So that was a good turnout.
Yeah, and I wanted to acknowledge, even though we've done a lot of the normal things that we normally do to pass home rule, that this time we tried one thing. We shamelessly stole and reapplied an idea out of Prescott Valley, who did it last summer, for an animated video cartoon, and we Prescottized it with our issues, and our Yavapai College intern, Sarah Saldana, was the one who figured out how to make this all work, and she did the whole thing, and it's her voice, and it's her face, and we got it published 20 days before the election closed out, but in total we got over 2,900 views. That represents, almost 17% of the voters in the election watched that video, and it was so simple and so clear. And so I just wanted to acknowledge when our staff does something amazing, that this time our intern did something amazing, and it made a big difference, 4 to 5 points higher than anything we've ever done. So thanks to Sarah, who's listening, maybe upstairs in HR. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, I wanted to find out, after I really took a deep dive in, as we all did, to our charter statement in terms of the election, is there can you explain to everybody here and on the audience and the listening public the process of maybe we've really got to probably do something with the verbiage in our charter? And I would like to be able to try to get that process started. So do you want to speak to that just for a second?
Just briefly, it's up to council or by initiative to make amendments to the charter, and we can do that. I think that, and you asked me this by email, so I'll just kind of state that, but we can get that on the agenda quickly. I think the council will need to have a discussion about how to change it, because changing it to clarify is one thing, and I could do that easy. But do we want to change it? Do we want to go the state route? That's a question for council, and I think we can put that on the agenda quickly and relatively quickly get it before the voters.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened in 2010 with the verbiage. The ballots cast, the votes cast of that office, there were a lot of things in there that were contradictory, and I don't understand why we couldn't do like the top, if there were 3 seats, the top 3 vote getters, and what the process would be to save ourselves money, by the way, if we wouldn't have to go on to the general election. So I think it's a great discussion for everybody to weigh in on and figure out what is best, because now, putting these 5 candidates back through this re-campaigning all the way till November just seems like a lot of waste time and money.
And this isn't the time for a vote, but if there's council direction to get this discussion back to council towards amending the charter, we can take that verbal direction and get on that.
Well, I think we should do that. So would I make a motion for that?
No, I think that's off topic. We're here just to canvass today.
Okay, we'll get it started. Thank you.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. It's no secret to anyone up here or watching at home that I was in this election and I lost, and I lost pretty handily. To be clear, it was not a close election. But I think what we're doing here is important. And in fact, I shamed my daughter into coming here. She's in the audience because I think this is an important thing we do, that even when you lose an election or when the results are not what people wanted. I was the only person who lost. So, so just me, the only loser. But this is something I've been teaching my daughter, who's going to NAU tomorrow to start her freshman year at college up there. Since she was a little kid, is that you agree by the rules before the game starts. And at the end of the game, you accept the results and you don't try to change the rules after the fact. And I'm very proud to be part of this process and to certify an election where I certainly wanted a different outcome, but I am pleased to uphold the democracy of our local elections. I think it's an important duty and an important part of our oath of office. Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth again.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding Section 6 of our charter, I went back, I looked at lots and lots of history for the last 15 to 20 years, and took a look at what's been happening. And the consistency of how we've done the formula has been through and through. I think one of the reasons to think about changing the charter is that, again, emphasis of words and how you read a sentence. There's been some misinterpretation. If you've been around forever, you know how it's been, the 50% plus 1 of the top line. But if you haven't been around, you don't know. And when you come from other places that do elections differently. So I don't want to change the intent of the charter. I'm not where you are. Because I do think in the past, again, looking back at history, there's been many, many elections where there's been multiple candidates, not just 1 or 2, multiple candidates for mayor, where there's been 8 to plus candidates for council. And the primary, similar to normal party politics, the primary whittles the funnel down to the top. And I think in a nonpartisan election, whittling it down from 8, 10, 12 candidates down to a reasonable number is the role of the primary. The 50% plus 1 says these candidates, half the voters, more than half the voters, support them. So let's not make them have to go all the way to the primary. But I do think, again, we're so used to, that there aren't that many candidates nowadays, but we could find ourselves back again where there's lots and lots of candidates. And so I absolutely applaud, the more I've thought about this over the course of the last few days, the role of the primary versus the role of the general. General is winner takes all on number of votes outright cast in that election. But I understand why this was done in 2010. I do think the language is open for a little misinterpretation, and I would be open to a charter amendment just to make sure that people understand the way the math is going to work.
Councilman Gambogi.
I'm sad to report that we have election deniers at the national level, and now we have election deniers here in Prescott. Part of this was attributed to the fact that some partisan groups wanted the single-shot candidates, and that created some of the undervotes. Others voted for the propositions and maybe not the candidates. And that may be a reflection of the candidates, but I think the election process we have is solid, and it's been around a long time. And I don't want to fall prey to denying election results because it didn't turn out in a certain candidate's favor.
Yeah, Ted, I mean, I looked back at probably 30 years worth of elections in the city, and I did come across several elections where we had literally dozens of candidates. And the top three after the primary turned out that there were some a candidate or two that replaced one of the top three once the number of candidates was narrowed after the primary and going to the general election. So it does happen. It's just there hasn't been that many people that wanted to run for office here recently. So maybe the value of the current process hasn't been demonstrated recently, but maybe with some better, I won't say better candidates, but maybe less controversial issues, there might be more people willing to put their hat in the ring. So with all that said, I think we'll take a couple of public comments here before we move to a vote.
Ralph Hess.
Good afternoon, Council. I am Ralph Hess from Prescott, Arizona. You've already received my comments if you've read my email to you. I don't anticipate any of my comments are going to impact the decision that you make today, but I do share concerns that have been expressed by a number of you. And the one thing is it's not just an issue with regard to the language of the city charter. It's the interaction between the county recorder, who runs the primary election, and the city charter. The county recorder counts votes cast, overvotes, undervotes, and then posts the final vote tallies. Prescott charter requires a tabulation of valid ballots, which is not defined, by the way, for each of the specific candidate offices. And that is the subject of the primary election. Yet the county recorder only posts the number of total ballots submitted for everything on the ballot. The charter does not, as I said, define valid ballots. The primary ballot presented to voters by the Yavapai County Recorder frames voting requirements for the candidate offices, does not conform with the charter provision requirements of Article 9, Section 6, which depends, as we've discussed, ballot requirements for those offices. And there's no way, really, I think Ms. Fruworth addressed it. There's no way not that there's no way, I'm saying there's no way. There's no way voters can be expected to complete their primary ballots thinking a candidate requires anything other than a majority of the votes cast to be elected. The primary ballot and posted election results from the county recorder suggest that, and that is the way every other election that the voters participate, that's how they're conducted. So candidates receive votes in the elections, not ballots. And so what does a majority of valid ballots even mean when it's not defined in the charter? I'm suggesting that the charter provision doesn't need to be amended. How it's going to be amended?
You have 30 seconds.
Who knows? So, I mean, that'll be by discussion among you and consideration of any comments from experts and public. I'm just encourage you to understand that the concerns with respect to this particular election is not just lack of clarity in the definitions within the city charter provision. It's also an inconsistency between the charter and the way that the county recorder runs the office, runs the election. Thank you.
Howard Mechanic.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I wanted to address the issue of the two elections that we've had. I've been here for 24 years, and I know, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that when there was a runoff, the results may have changed a little bit, and Councilmember Fruworth mentioned that there was a good idea to whittle down. But my experience over the last 24 years is that there are no candidate forums, maybe one or very scattered after the August election. There is no newspaper questionnaire after the August election. You've all run for office. I think it's a dead period. But we need a runoff. The question is there a way to have a runoff without having two elections? And the answer is yes. And it's a way to save the candidates a lot of time, save the public from having to look at the campaign signs for additional 3 months, and save the people from having to vote twice. I haven't mentioned what the term is because some people do not understand the details. So all I'm asking is, it sounds like you're going to look at a charter amendment, which I think is a great idea. I'm asking you to look at instant runoff voting, which is also known as ranked voting, ranked choice voting. It does not prefer left or right. It does not prefer political parties. We don't have political parties officially, but unofficially we do. It does not prefer political parties. We have to look at the way it works in a jurisdiction that has no proportional representation, has no districts, which is what we have here. Don't try to compare it with an area that has districts or proportional representation. All I'm asking, look at it. What it is when you vote, let's say there's 3 people running for mayor.
30 seconds, Howard.
If there's 3 people running for mayor, all you have to do is put your first choice, second choice, and third choice if you want. You don't have to. That creates an instant runoff election. And I don't think it's going to change anything except saving us time, saving us money and a hassle. Thank you.
Ken Bennett.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I guess I would like to associate my comments essentially with Councilwoman Fruworth. Some of you have talked about going back 20 years, looking at elections. Some have gone back 30 years. I go back 41 years to the 1984 election. I was one of 9 candidates for 3 council seats. 1 incumbent and 8 newbies vying for 3 seats. The incumbent councilman, Mario Ventura, very popular and a good councilman, even though he and I disagreed on many things, he was a good councilman. He got clearly 50 plus 1, at least 50 plus 1 of the voters. Voters cast ballots, which is why I think we do need, even if we consider some changes, and if we can clarify a few words to make sure that we define ballots as voters or vice versa or whatever. But Mr. Ventura got at least 50% plus 1 vote. And so it fell to the next 4 highest vote getters to move on to the general. I was number 3 of those 4. When we moved into the general, the 3rd place vote getter in the primary and the 4th place voter in the primary, Perry Haddon, moved into the 1 and 2 positions respectfully by the time it was the general. And one was narrow. Perry beat a fine gentleman named Bill Turner by 3 votes in the general election. But he won by 3 votes. And so I would not oppose looking at ways to clarify it, but I would strongly encourage you and urge you to stay with the spirit of what we have now, which is in a primary election, if a majority plus 1 of the voters express a preference for somebody in that primary election, we can avoid them needing to go on to a general election. I would also want to compliment Councilman Montoya for certifying an election that he would have chosen a different result in. I've had to do that as well. In 2010, when I was Secretary of State,
30 seconds, Mr.
I certified an election in which I had won. I was running again for Secretary of State. In 2014, I was the sitting Secretary of State running for governor, and I had to certify an election where I lost. And so I compliment the councilman for that. And I would encourage you all to keep the spirit of what we have. If we can clarify it, that's fine. But voters cast ballots, and it should be a majority of the voters' support to avoid having to go to a general election. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
All right, so at this point, I'll entertain a motion to
Mayor.
canvass and validate the.
Mayor, it would be my privilege to move to approve the official canvass for the August 5th, 2025 primary election.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Isn't that exciting? Well, thank you all for coming, and this was a stimulating conversation, but I think there are some maybe clarifications that can be added to our city charter to solve some of this somewhat confusing language. So with that said, this meeting is adjourned.